Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I'm your host, Mark Gabberty, the content marketing expert, bringing you 5 new episodes every week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. Hello, Breakthrough Success Sisters. I just wanted you all to know before the episode actually starts, I've been working a little bit behind the scenes to give you something really special. So a while ago, I wrote my book, Content Marketing Secrets, which helps people create, promote, and optimize their content for growth and revenue. And I just put the finishing touches together to offer that for free to anyone who is interested. So if you want your free copy of Content Marketing Secrets, all you have to do is head over to markgabberty.com/book. Now, let's jump right into the episode. One of the big things that we have to do for our businesses is hire virtual assistants. And if you listen to the last episode of Mike McCallix, you definitely know how important this is. But finding that right VA, finding the person who can help with so many different things is such a game changer for your business. We're going to talk about finding the right one and some of the benefits in this episode. So today's guest is the digital marketing and executive virtual assistant at Don't Panic Management. She is also the author of Panic Proof: How the Right Virtual Assistant Can Save Your Sanity and Grow Your Business. Since 2011, she's been making matches between chaotic, overworked entrepreneurs and focused, calm virtual assistants. It is a really great mix. We're going to dive into how to have that mix for ourselves. And none other than today's guest for episode 248, Jess Ostroff-Tyson, is going to share all that with us today. Jess, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for that awesome intro. I'm excited to be here.
Jess, I'm really looking forward to our interview because virtual assistants, they really make such a big difference, and I can't emphasize this enough. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation, but I'd like to get a little background before we do that. So can you share with us why you started Don't Panic Management?
Sure. So after I graduated college, I, like many people, didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I knew that I had some skills in marketing. I was really organized and detail oriented, but I just couldn't find the right fit in a job. And I was really hungry to find something in the world that I could do and make a difference. And so I started out doing some social media management for a company, and I was an executive assistant, I should say, not a virtual assistant. I didn't know what a virtual assistant was back then. But once I found out about virtual assisting, it was actually from a tweet that a former boss of mine had sent that he was looking for a virtual assistant because he had started his own business. And I went, well, maybe I could do that. And so I started working. It's basically, what I learned about it was that it was just doing executive assistant stuff, which I had done before, but doing it, from the comfort of your own home or from a coffee shop or anywhere where there's Wi-Fi. And so I was working for him while still at my full-time job for about 10 hours a week. And I was able to do that work, early in the morning or during my lunch break or after hours. And it was great because he didn't really care when I got the work done as long as it was done by the deadline. And I really loved that flexibility. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I lived about a mile from the beach, and I wanted that freedom to be able to, go to the beach in the morning maybe, and then do a few hours of work in the afternoon, and then go see my friends for dinner, or just kind of do what I felt like doing. And maybe one day I put in 12 hours, but the next day I put in 6 or something like that. And that freedom, that independence was what I was striving for. And so about a year and a half after I was freelancing as a virtual assistant, I started to develop, more and more connections and was able to get so much work that I couldn't do it all by myself. And I realized I needed to hire my own team and virtual assistants. So that's when I started Don't Panic Management officially. And so I started in 2009 and I incorporated the company in 2011, and it's just been growing and changing and evolving with the needs of our clients ever since.
And I really like how you talked about the virtual assistant lifestyle because that may not necessarily be something that we as business owners think about when we are hiring
Mm-hmm.
a VA. We tend to think about our lifestyle, but the virtual assistant lifestyle, I mean, it's a very like you get the work that you want to pursue, you have the hour flexibility. So it's really great that you mentioned the lifestyle of people who we would consider adding onto our business who would help us with various roles. But how can we spot an ideal virtual assistant, someone who can do the tasks very well and is reliable?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and it does really depend on what you're looking for. But just speaking of that sort of independence and flexibility, you want to be careful that the person you're talking to and looking at isn't just wanting to like go to the beach or travel the world. For some virtual assistants, it's really just a means to an end. It's really just something that they do just to make some money so that they can do other things. And in my experience, the best virtual assistants, they do care about their life and maybe their family or their travels or whatever else they do, but they also really care about their work. They care about making a difference. And it's hard to spot that in just some, initial conversations with, applicants that you're getting to be your virtual assistant. But some things that I like to ask when I'm interviewing my VAs are things like, what is something that you've done at work where you really feel like you knocked it out of the park? What do you do to keep learning? How do you manage your schedule? What are your favorite things to do at work and outside of work? And you can start to understand what makes that person tick, both professionally and personally. I think it's also good when you're interviewing somebody to ask some of those more personal questions because it allows you to make a connection with that person. If you talk to somebody who maybe lives in Aspen and loves to ski and you love to ski and you go to Park City every year, you have that common connection. It starts to help you build the trust. But the important thing is to make sure that the person isn't only doing it because they want to ski all day. Another question that I ask is, where do you want to be in 5 years? And also even in a shorter term, if we started working together today, what do you hope that my clients say about you in 1 year? And that's very telling as well. If they say like, well, I get the job done and I do things on time, that's great. And that's maybe all you need. But what I look for is someone who says, I want my clients to feel like they trust me, that they have a really good working relationship with me, that they look forward to our weekly calls, and that I'm really making a difference in their business and in their life. So, those are some less tangible things that you can sort of glean from an interview, especially a video interview. You can start to understand what they're really like as a person and how they like to get their work done and whether or not the work matters to them. Because I think that when you have somebody who cares, they ultimately do better work. And then it's somebody that you can create a long-lasting partnership with.
And I really like the idea of a video interview because it's a different experience when you get to see the person face to face. It gives you a face to the person who you could potentially hire for your company for months or even years out. And one of the concerns that I hear about with people who are thinking about hiring VAs that they're not sure if it's necessarily worth it. They feel like they're losing money by investing in the virtual assistant. And I'm wondering, like, how can we set ourselves up so we are making a positive ROI from the investment we're making for a VA?
Right. Well, the key word you said is investment. And if you do think that you're going to lose money, well, try not to think that. That's not a good way to go into a relationship because then you're going to be putting your assistant on the defense and making them try to prove themselves the whole time, which is definitely a recipe for disaster. So you don't want that. You want to be able to look at your budget and be realistic about what you can afford. And maybe you can't afford it yet. When I started, I didn't know if I could afford an assistant or somebody to help me with the work that I was doing. And at that point, I was pretty young and I didn't have an accounting team or a finance officer. And so I I just took the leap because for me, it was more important to not be working, 15-hour days and to get some of my life back than it was to spend a little bit of money. So I always recommend that you look at your budget, look at everything that you're spending and everything that you're making. I can't give you, a set number that everybody should spend on a virtual assistant because it totally depends. But think about what your realistic budget is for a virtual assistant. And then also think about what your reach goal might be for a virtual assistant. Sometimes you do have to spend money to make money. And so if your budget is maybe $500 a month and you can get, 5 hours a week of a virtual assistant's help for that, but you really need 10 hours a week and your stretch goal is $1,000 a month, then maybe you should spend it. Maybe you should spend the $1,000 for, 3 months and see if it really makes a difference. Because the goal here is that your time is worth more than the virtual assistant's time, theoretically. You charge $300 an hour and your virtual assistant is $50 an hour. So if you all of a sudden get 10 hours back in your week, where you can be charging $300 for those hours, you should be making exponential money, not losing money. But, the way you get set up to do that is to make sure that you're investing the time and the energy to set up processes for your virtual assistant to follow. And these can be written processes, in a Google Doc or some kind of shared folder. They could also be, a Loom video where you're actually walking through and explaining how you do something. We've done these for our assistants and for our clients for everything from here's how you schedule a meeting to here's how you send invoices, here's how you produce a video, here's how you produce a podcast, here's how you load a blog post into my WordPress account. You can make these quick, easy videos with a tool like Loom or Camtasia in practically no time. And the great thing about doing that and filing them and organizing them for your assistant is that then you always have them. So even if your assistant doesn't work out, you don't have to reinvent the wheel the next time you hire somebody. So I always recommend doing as much as you can with processes and training videos and training documents before you even hire an assistant, because not only will it help you figure out what exactly you need your assistant to do, but it will take some of the pressure off you when they're starting. They'll be able to hit the ground running instead of you taking, another week or month to actually get the pieces and parts together for them to start. I hope that answered the question.
And I really like the idea, like you mentioned, baby steps, like $1,000 a month. Try it for 3 months because one of the things that, like, if you want to say that virtual assistant, like, they may lose you money, try it, because I've seen that it helps me grow my business, helps me grow my revenue, because as Jess mentioned, the idea is that your time is worth more time than the virtual assistant's time, that $300 per hour versus $50 per hour example. So I would recommend that you try it if you haven't tried it yet. But I feel like trying and just starting is that really hard step, especially when it comes to hiring a VA. So how do you recommend business owners get more comfortable with taking that leap and hiring their first assistant?
Oh, man. Well, it's definitely a mental shift. And I've gone through this myself as well. And I really burned myself out a few years ago, just working too much and putting everything on me, making it seem like I had to do everything. I had to manage every client relationship, every invoice, every email. And I call it the superhero syndrome. Like I could hold up a mountain with my pinky, and the reality is that I couldn't. And I got sick, I got burned out. And I don't think that it should take that for business owners to realize that they need help. I think more importantly, they should evaluate their time and do an audit of their time and see, how many things that I do on a daily and weekly basis am I uniquely qualified to do. And if there are things on that list that I'm not uniquely qualified to do, I should delegate those or automate those or just get rid of those, take them completely out of the equation. There are a lot of things that we do just because we've always done them. And that's not a good enough reason. Everything that you do as a business owner, or entrepreneur, or a manager, should be related to some goal, whether it's raising your thought leadership in the industry, whether it's growing your revenue, whether it's making deeper connections with your colleagues. Everything you do should be connected to a goal. And if it's not, then you shouldn't do it. And if it is, but somebody else can do it, let them. But that does take a little bit of a mental shift, because you have to be comfortable with the idea that you don't have to do everything and that somebody might be able to do it just as well for you. For me, I was such a perfectionist. I didn't believe that anybody else could do it as well as I could. And so that's why it took me such a long time to let go. But now what I always say is the amount that you're willing to let go is the amount that you'll be able to grow. And I was holding myself back from growth because I couldn't just relinquish some of these tasks. And, in the beginning, I think you have to be willing to accept mistakes, to accept that things aren't going to go perfectly. But the longer you work at it, the longer you give feedback to your assistant and help them see how you want it done, eventually they'll get there. And if they don't, well, maybe you need to find somebody else. But, if you spend the time up front finding a really great person who has the experience and has the skills and has the personality that you trust, and then you work on training them and getting them up to speed with the way you like things done, the chances are that they're going to be able to do it just as well, if not better than you can. I realized I hated doing contracts. I hated doing invoices. I hated all of those operations tasks that it takes to run a business. And now my operations manager does them way better than I could have ever done them. And she's totally reinvented our operations process to a way that's much more efficient, that makes much more sense for our clients, and I don't have to do it. So it's a win-win for everybody. And once you start to think about the possibilities, instead of thinking about what could go wrong, think about what could go right. Think about how much better your life could be, how much more calm you'll be, not worrying about these things anymore. And I think that's the first step to really developing one of these great relationships.
I really like how you mentioned the mindset shift, and also the fact that you want to spend some time to find the right person, because the way all these different websites are set up, like Upwork, Fiverr, onlinejobs.ph, you can technically hire your next VA in just a few minutes. But
right.
I mean, if you're not doing the due diligence, like Jess mentioned earlier, that video interview, you could be hiring the wrong assistant. And if you have a bad, it's harder to recover or to really pursue it if your first experience is really bad than if it's a really positive experience. So really putting in that time, finding the right person, really important. And I know that obviously, for all of us who hire VAs, we don't necessarily have 100% success. So I'm wondering if you could share with us one of the big challenges that you faced in your journey with hiring VAs and building their brand, and the powerful lesson you learned during that challenge.
Yeah, I've always really gone with my gut. And if I get a good feeling about somebody, I want to work with them. And the truth, though, is that doesn't always work. And I think I've learned that the hard way in many aspects of my business, that your gut isn't always right. So I like to try to put data behind my gut feeling. And the way I've been able to do that now is not only conduct at least 2 interviews with assistants, but also have them submit a writing sample, because I think that written communications is really important if you're a virtual assistant, because you're going to be emailing people, texting people, Slack chatting people. So I always ask for a written writing sample. And then after they get through the second interview and I feel really good about them, I do a test project. And the test project, I have maybe 5 of them that I pick from. And it depends on what the assistant wants to do. If they want to be a writer, I give them a writing project. If they want to be a podcast producer, I give them that. If they want to be an admin assistant, I give them an admin test. And actually, the admin test that I have is 2 parts, because I want to be able to see, are they detail oriented and are they organized? And then the test project, we actually pay for test projects. We want to, give people a good feeling about working with us. And so, it's not a lot of money, but we do pay them some money for them to submit the test project. If you are doing this, I would suggest maybe doing a test project that's an actual project, something that you need. Maybe it's not something you need tomorrow, but it's something you need done before next month, because then you're kind of paying forward for a project that you needed to have done anyway. So it's a good way to get some work done, and also to see how the virtual assistant does given your parameters and your directions. And so some of the things I look at with a test project, we have a rubric that we grade each test project against. And, it's things like, did they submit it in the format that I asked for? Did they submit it by the deadline? Did they have any questions throughout the process? And were the questions thoughtful? I think it's okay to ask questions when you're working on something, but if it's something that could have been answered in, the instructions email that I sent, that's not good because that shows me that you didn't really read the assignment. So it's things like that. And then, of course, the quality of the assignment is important. And, did they go above and beyond? Did they hit it? Did they hit it right? Did they include all the details that I need? So all of those things are ways that I'm able to put data behind the person that I feel good about. And for me, that's made all the difference, because I just don't think that you can always take people at their word. Unfortunately, if someone says, oh yeah, I've got tons of experience with podcast production. I use Zencaster, I use GarageBand, I use Logic, all this stuff. Well, they might be lying and that sucks, but it's the reality of the world. And now that there are so many virtual assistants out there, there's so many people to choose from. If you're serious about hiring somebody great that you want to have with you for the long term, then you need to be serious about your hiring process. And a good way to do that is to ask really thoughtful questions, of course, in the interview, but then do a test. Make sure that they can do what they say that they can do. And that way, when you have that test project done and you can look at it, from a very logical perspective, you'll be able to tell whether or not they're a good fit. And then that's when you start the trial. And I always say, do a trial period. 3 months is for me, the minimum trial period. And that's what our contracts say as well. You can't get out of our contract unless there's some egregious issue. And that's because, when you're only working 5 or 10 or 15 hours a week with somebody, it's hard to build up that rhythm and that cadence and that trust in less than 3 months, I think. So do a trial period, and say if at the end of the trial period, I don't feel good about this, then we're just going to cut ties and go our separate ways, no hard feelings. And that also, it gives you a little bit of security, I would say, so you don't feel like you're beholden to this person forever and ever. You got 3 months, you give it your all, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay.
Jess, I really like the idea of that that project that you're giving, that test run, because if you bring them into the real nitty gritty, especially for some businesses where that real nitty gritty, that real experience, that non-test or simulation is between the assistant and the client, or between the assistant and your entire audience. So it's really good to give them that test run. I'm really happy that you mentioned that as something that we could definitely do to get through some of the initial challenges that we may have. And one of the ways that I believe we get through some of the challenges we face is acquiring knowledge in the area that we're trying to battle against. So with that in mind, I'm wondering if you could share with us 3 books that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
In virtual assistant stuff or in business or all of the above?
All of the above.
Oh, man. Well, one of my favorite business books is by Pam Slim. It's called Body of Work. It's kind of almost more like a workbook. And it kind of helped me when I was not sure what I wanted to do with my life. It helped me hone in on the things that really mattered to me and sort of pick my path. I think as entrepreneurs, we are idea people. We always have something that we want to try and do. And that was actually a crutch for me, because I would say, oh, I'm not going to really pursue this or that because I have this other idea. And so I was never really following through with a lot of the things that I wanted to do. And that book helped me focus a little more and actually put the pen to paper and make a plan. In terms of virtual assistants, I love Chris Ducker. He is a good friend and colleague. He has an agency that it's based in the Philippines and has all Filipino VAs, which are great for a lot of reasons. I think that there are some people who prefer to have a local VA and some people who don't care and just need certain things. And his team has been really great. He wrote a book called Virtual Freedom, which is a great kind of starter guide to working with a virtual assistant. And then I have to just plug my own book because I sort of wrote, my idea for my book was the next level to Chris's book. So I think if you read the two of them, you'll have everything you need to hire and train a virtual assistant. And my book is called Panic Proof: How the Right Virtual Assistant Can Save Your Sanity and Grow Your Business. And it's a lot more of those tactical things I was talking about, like how to conduct an interview, how to do a test project, how to evaluate, how to train, all of those kinds of things to really make a relationship that's going to last. So those are my three.
Jess, thank you for sharing with us those great book recommendations. Those will all be in the show notes, marketability.com/E248. We'll also throw in podcast domination in there for anyone interested in launching, growing, and monetizing their own podcast. marketability.com/PD is the link to that book. And before we wrap up this episode, Jess, I've asked you several questions throughout our time together, but what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
I think we need to be asking ourselves what kind of life we really want to live. And we get so bogged down with work and the day-to-day. And I think especially as we're so ambitious, we want to do big things with our businesses and with our lives. But, I always think about those articles that say, what 10 90-year-olds wish they did more in their life. And it's never that they wanted to work more. It's always that they wish that they made more human connections and spent more time outside and with their family and finding true love. And I think that once we are more intentional about the life that we want to live, we're going to be happier. We're going to be able to do the work that matters to us and delegate the work that doesn't, but also create time in our lives for the things that are truly important, which is our friends, our family, our health, and the other things in our life that brings us joy. So I think we should always be asking ourselves, how can I live a more intentional life? What does my ideal life look like? And build it, because I think the sky's the limit. You can build a life that you love. You can create that flexibility, the independence that you want. And I think we'll all be better business people and just better humans if we do that.
Jess, thank you for sharing with us that great question, all of your great insights throughout our time together, really getting a deeper understanding of how we want to live our lives. So thank you for that. And anyone who wants to learn more about Jess, get your copy of her book, Panic Proof: How the Right Virtual Assistant Can Save Your Sanity and Grow Your Business. That will be in the show notes, as mentioned before, marketability.com/E248. But Jess, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. It's such a pleasure to have you on Breakthrough Success.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody.
How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn